السلام عليكم ورحمة الله وبركاته. أعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم. بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم. رب اشرح لي صدري ويسر لي أمري واحلل عقدة من لساني يفقه قولي واجعل لي وزيرا من أهلي هارون أخي اشدد به أزري وأشرك في أمري كي نسبحك كثيرا ونذكرك كثيرا إنك كنت بنا بصيرا. وصل اللهم على محمد وعلى آله وأصحابه وأتباعه وسلم. ربنا اغفر لنا وارحمنا وأنت خير الراحمين آمين. والحمد لله رب العالمين وصل اللهم على محمد وعلى آله وأصحابه وأتباعه وسلم. ربنا اغفر لنا وارحمنا وأنت خير الراحمين آمين. I'm very happy, alhamdulillah, that we are, inshallah, going to start the story of the Prophet Jesus in the Quran. Now, the subtitle should have attracted your attention: demystifying the narration of or narrations of the stories in the Quran. I mean, you understand what it means, definitely in English. What we mean by it, the stories become somehow mystified. Well, something happened to the Prophet Jesus. He was born out of without a marriage contract with any one of these world, a mortal man. But it is a miracle. So, okay, I accept. Since the Quran says so, some people say, okay, but what does it mean? That is a mystery. Now, inshallah, we are trying to demystify the narration of this story in the Quran and make it applicable to our life. So before we start the story itself, we have to bear in mind one thing, that we recently studied the story of Mary in the Quran, which is very closely related to the story of the Prophet Jesus. So what I intended not to repeat the same things related to Mary and her son, Jesus. So I didn't really quote or put it in the slides to be studied. If we had studied during our weeks that we studied the story of Mary, so I mean, one shouldn't think that we missed out some verses, but because we studied them while we are studying the story of Mary. That is one point. And another point, I think the Prophet Jesus' story in the Quran is the most scattered all over the Quran. Mostly, I mean, all over, not everywhere, of course, but mostly. Why is this so? Because we keep telling that we are going to study not the life of a prophet, but the servant of how people received the absoluteness of God, the uniqueness of God, and how they rejected it, and the reason, because fundamentally we will study that the story of Jesus is in fact the story of our understanding of the universe, how it came into existence, how the things develop while they are in existence, how they improve themselves if they do so, and how are we going to understand this so that we will have a right attitude towards the creation, and therefore right attitude towards understanding our own existence and ultimately the purpose of our life. That is why it is important that the Quran follows a very strange structure. Why is it strange? Almost none of the human-made literature is presented to us in this way. The reason? Because the Quran jumps from one point to another, and it receives from some really biased people against the Quran. It is inconsistent. Yes, it seems to be. I don't blame them, because its literature structure is really inconsistent. But in order to understand this inconsistency structure of the Quran, not the ideas, but structure of the Quran, language, not the language really, sentences, paragraphs, jumping from another, has a great mystery that we have to discover. It's full of wisdom. We have to understand this, because the aim of the Quran is not to give information, which we always repeat this. That is the most important thing, or the point, principle we have to bear in mind while we are studying and trying to understand the Quran. Why? Because the purpose of the Quran is not to give information, not to narrate what happened in the past or what happened during the life of the Prophet Muhammad, which are also heavily and in detail explained. But always the Quran follows a principle which aims at reaching its purpose. What is that? What is its purpose? Quran has many purposes. Of course, fundamentally, to establish the reality of existence. Therefore, introduce the source of existence of the Quran to human beings. That is the main purpose of the Quran, objectives of the Quran. Introducing the honor to human beings, or the honor of human beings to themselves, to us. And then the other pillars of faith, as it is listed in the Muslim scholars' books. So the purpose of the existence is to go and prepare and go, of course, ultimately at the end, into another existence. That is then, this universe is a school, educating ourselves to be graduated so that we will get our degree, and accordingly we will be successful, or God forbid, unsuccessful in life, real life. And all the analyses really aim at these two fundamental principles as far as belief is concerned, or practices of belief is concerned. Whereas when it comes to the practical life of this world, and of course tied up with belief foundation, how are we going to practice this belief in our life? that is very, very closely and strictly related to the necessity of the prophets and their messages, their practices, so that they will come with a message, and this, under the instruction of this message, they will practice it and tell us how are we going to organize our individual and social life, establish justice, act according to the will of the Creator, and submit your will to the will of absolute will of the Creator. How are we going to do it? There is only one way to see and watch out or observe the life of the instructor, the prophet, whatever the prophet he brings. I mean, in our case, Muhammad, peace and blessings be upon him. In earlier ages, other prophets, Moses, Jesus, Abraham, Solomon, whatever, Idris, whatever you call them, Adam, Noah. So all these people, all these people's life narrations or life stories are told to us in order to teach us various aspects of our practical life, So that is why while the Quran, another thing we have to be careful, while the Quran is mentioning some rules related to our social or private life, suddenly it breaks it and turns into an example. In the example of the story of Jesus, in the example of the story of Moses, scattered. But exceptionally, the story of Yusuf is told almost from the beginning, almost to the end, related to his family life, his life journey from hatred of his brothers, family inside problems, and then becoming being a slave and getting education in where he was enslaved in the household of at the highest class administrative status, and then imprisoned, and then accused of unchastity, and then appreciation by the king. All the various aspects of life is summarized in the story of Yusuf in a consequent way. Apart from this, the most scattered one is the story of Jesus. The second one is the story of Moses. So while the fiqh matters or the legal matters are discussed, the Quran says, look, this legal matter is only important if you know the foundation of it, jumps into belief, and especially tawheed, oneness of God, uniqueness of God, absoluteness of God, and submission to it. Giving the examples of the people who, of the previous generations, maybe in the life of the Prophet as well, not maybe, definitely, in the life of the Prophet Muhammad as well, how they reacted against the Prophet so that they could not understand the purpose of practicing the advice of God in our life, personal or social life. That is why we find the stories of the Quran scattered everywhere, but at the same time, subjects are jumping from one point to another. The point is not to teach certain things, but if you like, weaving them with each other demonstrating them, look, you cannot separate the belief from your practical life, from your social construction, and from your personal relationship within yourself, your understanding, your evaluating your own feelings, and also with your close relatives or with your environment relationship with the other tribes and other people who follow, who reject the prophetic message. All of them are intermingled with each other. You cannot separate that. For example, I believe in God, I believe in the hereafter. Now it is time to pray, or it is time to be nice to my neighbor and work for my family, to take care of the needs of my family members. Or the mother said, oh, I have to take care of the babies and children, etc., etc., organize all of them and take care of. Nowadays, everybody's crazy like I was about the education of the children. Crazy. I mean, so they are all mixture of different aspects of our life. Suddenly, don't forget, you are going to die. Suddenly, the universe is subject to really collapse too. Last time when you were telling me how to what's the word? How to the word didn't come to my mind. Distribute my wealth when I die among my I don't know, or my children or relatives, or if I want to give away some of them to charity, how can I organize it? Suddenly it comes the day. This word is transit. And do you think you will be alone? You will be left alone without being taken into it? Okay, I think it was a mistake. So, and then suddenly changes. You know what happened to the story of Shuaib and his people? You look at this Lut, how did they did? And Abraham came to something, and the angels came to Abraham, gave the news, and then Zechariah, hey, you didn't have a child, and you were so desperate and disappointed. I'm going to give you a wonderful child. It means God's promise is there. Everything is arranged under the will of God. So let's be more specific now. While we are studying the Quran, we should wonder and at the same time understand. Tie up, always tie up. Although the subject matter seems to be different, but they are related. What does it mean? So if you are asked, for example, to give to charity, take care of the poor, needy, and the desperate people, orphans, suddenly says, when the day of resurrection established, it means, hey, while you are doing this, don't forget, you will be taken into account for all what you have done. Now what? And then, those who people deny God and they indulge into their own life, forget about the hereafter. While you are doing this, you will receive a message from your egoistic side. It is in the language of the Quran, from Satan, that why do you spend your money on somebody else? So you have to take care of your family members first. And of course, God doesn't ask you to give something what you really yourself give, to give something away what you really give. But we are very generous to ourselves when it comes to giving. I'm seeing the same thing in my own life. When it comes to giving, we are very stingy. Yeah, I experienced this. It comes everything to my mind that, oh, I need to do that. Of course it needs. So my family needs that. My children are going to grow and I have to take care of their fees, the university education fees, and I'm responsible for their health and for their shelter. Everything comes to my mind while I am about to give to charity. But when I am just seeing something in my neighbor, in the house of my neighbor or one of relatives, that is fine. Why don't we have one? Never comes to other expenditures to our mind when it comes to worldly expenditures. So that is the mystery of the Quran's being so inconsistent, seemingly in its structure. But while we are reading this, the Quran, we have to bear in mind that, it is related. What this apparently irrelevant topics are intermingled, intertwined within each other. So without belief, without thinking of the end of my life and my actions, and without belief in God and the messenger, etc., if I do all these good actions, seemingly, I will be a loser. Why? Because I didn't take into account that there will be a second creation, next creation, that I will be responsible before God, the creator, the real owner of the property. I have to really acknowledge it. So Jesus' story is everywhere because it is one of the most important fundamentals of the belief structure of the Quran. So, what happens? We will see that the end of the story of Jesus reached to the two extreme points. One is deifying it. The other one is denying its creation. It is the way it is created. It means miraculous creation. What does it mean? When we are concentrating on Tawheed, and in order to understand the reality of Tawheed, we have to interpret how the universe exists. Without interpreting interpreting and having a right understanding of creation, I don't think anyone can reach real meaning of Tawheed, oneness of God. Without witness, you cannot have an imaginary belief in absolute God. It means, there must be maybe, there seems to be, yes, it is a belief in God, but we have to bear in mind that everybody is responsible for his or her own capacity. We have to be fair. We cannot expect anyone to be at the highest position in belief or perfect belief. But I have to ask myself how much of my qualities or potentialities that I am aware of, utilizing in order to become aware of the truth. But evidence, without evidence, impossible. But those people, general public, may have a very simple evidence, looking at a creation of something, admiring at it, but look, it is an evidence, and concluding that, come on, it cannot happen by itself. There must be a creator who arranged the whole universe. That is the conclusion. That's it. And he has its own evidence. Very simple, very basic, but it is an evidence. At the end of the day, he is not really imagining believing God or God with no evidence at all. But can you and I do the same thing? Not at this level. We can analyze it. We know what is ups and downs of life and where our benefits are. How can I really present myself if I want to get a new job and whatever. So to make money, to have a better position, we can ask everyone, I'm going to do something this way, that way, or let's talk at a very simple example, but very practical. I'm going to buy a car. How many people I consulted? How about my believing God and understanding the message of the revelation in general scriptures, and in particular the Quran? And how many people did I consult? That's a big question, important question. How many books did I read? While I am preparing myself to have a profession, how many books did I read? How many years did I go to school? How many years? Really? I took care of my education. Or if somebody doesn't go to school, but in order to have a profession, how many years he has been educated in a particular area of work or job? How many years? When it comes to religion, that's it. Half an hour, not even one, half an hour a week, listening to the sermons in the mosques, church, etc. And then that's it. I know I'm a Muslim, alhamdulillah. Follow the culture. That is a disaster, unfortunately. We have to utilize our capacity as much as we can do, and we are aware of it. Now, we will see in the life of the prophet Jesus, his followers were very extremely limited. Of course, the previous prophets' followers are not really numerically mentioned in the Quran, but the followers of the Jesus, as the prophet Jesus, as he is the closest, almost the closest, John the Baptist, I think, in between, or at the same time with Jesus. And then Muhammad's followers will be really presented to our attention. The followers of Jesus are said, a handful of people. How are you? A very small number of people. They give, the history gives some number, small number, a dozen of them, but doesn't have to be in this way. But we know that it is very simple, very small. Afterwards, Jesus's message, the prophet Jesus's message, became widespread somehow among the children of Israel. And then started, there is no need to go the historical background and what really, what happened in the course of time, but let's say spread around, but as it spread around, it became more and more diluted with under the influence of the place where it was taken, and in their area, which kind of culture was prominent, it became really influenced by it. For example, there were nowadays in Egypt, in Iskandariya, it was a really very famous place for its scholarship, and a very famous library, the most maybe of its time, most widely covered library, and scholars around the library in Iskandariya, they had various ways of understanding the creation and God, and it was affected by them. Why is it important? We have to be careful while we are trying to understand the Quran, not to interpret the Quran, try to understand the Quran and within the cultural environment wherever we are, so that we may fall into the influence of the environmental culture. We have to be very careful, but when it comes to the practical side of it, that is completely another matter. But in understanding the message of the Quran and the fundamental teachings of the Quran, especially belief subjects of the Quran, we have to be extremely careful not to make it be subjected to the influence of prevalent culture wherever you are. Nowadays, the global world became one word. So previous civilization and philosophies, understandings, what I mean by not the discipline of philosophy, understandings, how the people really reason, how the people interpret existence, how the people interpret God, understand God. So nowadays, for example, the most influential ideology, understanding of existence is causality. Causes are under various names, doesn't matter, nature, accident, evolving, developing, whatever, happened in this way or another way, but all attaching power to causes. Now, how it influenced in some parts, in some minds of the Muslim scholars, but mostly those people who study science, they assigned the status to God as to be the first cause, creator of the universe, and then he created the universe in such a way that everything now develops with this quality. This is very much widely spread. Even people may say, look, I don't believe in that. Still, in their treatment of the creation, we see that it is really infiltrated into our understanding of creation. And especially in our practical life, it is very much prevalent. We attach some sort of being existence of something, especially satisfaction, to matter. And especially in as far as our practical actions are concerned, assigning them the author, the cause is ourselves. I, always. I. What the culture says, me. I would say I, because in our language, we use, I don't mind. I wanted this. I did this, I enjoyed it, or I hated it, etc. So it reflects itself on other events in the creation, saying that the sun is hot. Daily language aside, are we aware of it? It's our practical language. Or do we really mean it or not? I mean, without realizing, it's a very typical example. Oh, it is windy. It is freezing, etc. These languages are daily spoken languages. I mean, we shouldn't really blame anyone and ourselves for this, but we have to be careful. One thing that never should be forgotten is this. Everything at every moment needs a creation, or a creator, the source of existence. Every quality of anything needs the source of existence. So we have to always keep in our mind that source of existence of everything needs to be explained, and there is only one way to separate the cause from the effect. That's what we are going to study, the light of Jesus, and see how it is simply put it in the Quran in the example of miraculous birth of Jesus. That is why it is essential subject. It is an essential subject that we have to see the miraculous creation at every moment, in everything at every moment. Miraculous creation. The example of Jesus is a simple example presented to human beings so that everybody can and will understand. Okay, that is what I've got to say as an introduction to the story of Jesus and how it is important for us. It's very important for us. So, any question, any comment you would like to share? Otherwise, we will go to the first verse we are going to study. Right? If you have anything to say, to share, please. Now, this is the first verse. So,
Assalamu alaikum. Brother Ali, I just wanted to highlight the last point that I heard from you, which it kind of, I found myself, my heart agreeing with it wholly as a whole, that the prevalent understanding of the existence nowadays in this age is referring things to the causes, and especially to when it comes to our personal lives, referring the result of our work to ourselves, to I.
Mm-hmm.
Actually, that's it. I just wanted to say it, emphasize it. It was important for me. Maybe it's important for the others as well. Thank you.
Yeah. Thank you for sharing. It's beautiful. Excellent. Thank you. And there is a note from Agabe. I believe, and my experience tells me, that not putting in daily language is harmful as well, somehow. Not putting in daily language is harmful as well. It makes me forget as I am forgetful. am I understanding it in a different way? I think I believe in my experience tells me that not putting in my daily language, not putting tawhid in my daily language, or that the God is the one who created. It is not me. I just asked for it. And if I don't put it, I understood from now that it is harmful. It makes me forget as I am forgetful. I mean, yes, we are created with the ability to forget, but also we are created with the ability to remember and keep in mind. So both sides. So, inshallah, we will continue. This verse, Ali Imran 46, section 3, verse number 36. So it says, وَيُكَلِّمُ النَّاسَ فِي الْمَهْدِ وَكَهْلًا وَمِنَ الصَّالِحِينَ. So, and he will speak to people in his cradle, in his infancy, and in adulthood, and will be one of the righteous. Why it is mentioned that he will speak in his cradle and also in his adulthood? He will be one of the righteous. Now, can you guess what it really means? I am excited. So it is amazing. I give you an example to you. I give you an example, and then you will see why I am excited. You may say a seed is created by God, but it grows into a plant or tree. You may say, oh, an egg, I mean, let's call it human semen egg, is created by God, but it's developing by itself. What this verse says, Jesus, the symbol of David, spoke in the form of infancy, fetus, whatever, because the pregnancy was also miraculous, by God directly. And as he grew, he also continued declaring the absoluteness, oneness of his creator. It means spoke the truth to human being, declared it, announced it. So not only the seed, not only the first atom or the first beta exploited in the beginning of the universe, whatever they say, I don't know whether it is true or not. I don't really agree or disagree about this being that theory. Maybe, may not be, none of my business. Everything is created miraculously by the absolute creator, needs to be created. Anyways, the qualities of the atom, it needs to be created at the same time as it existed, and it developed into a tree of the universe. Still, it needs to be created. It is the development needs to be created. At every stage of his life, Jesus spoke to people, and he is, why they say will be one of the righteous? I mean, in the context, yeah, they say, he is always, he has, and he is, and he will be always from among the righteous. It means the creation at every stage of its existence, at every moment. or declares the reality of its creator. The tree is a very brilliant example of miraculous creation, as well as the shoot, as well as the seed, as well as the very cell it has. There's a DNA, whatever the writings that say it simply, everything declares the truth, the reality, the qualities of their creator. So there is nothing in the world with no quality existence in anything which can be explained away by attributing it to anything but an absolute creator, absolute power, absolute knowledge, which is really swaying all over the universe at the same time. Directly related, everything connected to each other, everything. So we cannot really isolate one being from the rest of the universe and having it independently existing. Never. Everything is within the way the universe is created, which is called the order of the universe. Excuse. Okay, so would you like to make a comment on this verse? Beautiful verse, beautiful. It means as in his cradle. I mean, the seed in the cradle of seed is where? The soil. Cradle of a semen is where? The fetus is where? Madras woman. Incredible. And as they grow, they speak right only at every moment. This is very interesting how Jesus's life started. And the Quran gives us this beautiful way, simple way of explaining the reality of existence. Really, I really admire the rhetoric, eloquence of the Quran. It's beautiful. It's admirable, unbelievable, unbelievable. Very simple, but very deep. Okay. Any comment, anything? Otherwise, I will pass to the next passage.
Excuse me. As far as I understand, if I'm not mistaken, you liken this. I would like to understand it better. That's why I'm asking this question. You liken this verse as it is resembled in the seed and the tree and etc. Am I correct that the seed speaks as a seed, the tree speaks as a tree, and the fruit of the tree speaks as a fruit, and refers or shows the conscious beings that it can only be made in each of its stage by the maker of the whole universe?
Sorry, that's what I understood. It is from the cradle to adulthood. It is a process of development. Seems to be it is developing. The Jesus is growing himself, but still at every stage he declared the truth, the revelation in his miraculous creation. Look, not only the conception of Mary was miraculous. Every stage is a miracle. So he was born as a prophet, started announcing the absoluteness of the Creator, which is called Tawheed, and he died is announcing the absoluteness of the Creator. I mean, died here or later on. This is not our subject. It's not important. Whatever it meant, whether he was created or he was ascended to God, and they killed him, they didn't kill him. Yes, we have to read in it. Read into these messages, not as a story. Jesus wasn't killed historically. So what? What does it mean? What does it mean? He was ascended to God. What does it mean? They tried to crucify him. What does it mean? What does it mean? What does it mean to me? So we shouldn't turn it into a simple story and also quarreling with Christians, with Jews, etc., with other materialist people who deny his creation as miraculous creation. So this is not, those people did so, what shall I do? Why does God tell to me? So I have to believe that Jesus was not killed. This cannot be the purpose of the teaching of absolute being to me as a guidance to universal guidance to whole mankind after the advance of the Prophet Muhammad. Why Jesus was killed or wasn't killed. So what? But the Quran mentions, yes, the Quran mentions that Jesus spoke in the cradle. Quran mentions that he spoke when he grew up, and he was always righteous. Well, the Quran mentions, yeah. Do I insist that did Jesus speak when he was in cradle? Oh, come on, it is impossible. Is it the point? What am I going to do arguing with Christians that I think in Christian theology or belief system, this miracle, this speaking in the cradle is not mentioned there. It doesn't matter. That is how the Bible or the people inherited the narration of the Bible in their age, and they didn't get this one. So we have to impose on them. No, we have to understand that all our friends, our brothers in belief in God, so understand the meaning of the birth of Jesus in a miraculous way and apply it to your life, whether he was killed, he wasn't killed, he spoke with the baby or not. Every stage of creation declares the absoluteness of its creator, and all its parts harmoniously declares the absoluteness of its creator. That is the point. Let's not turn the Quranic message or the message of the Bible into a simple childish quarrel by reading the scripture, God's word, literally. Come on. Even you cannot read a poem written by a simple man, literally, which is ridiculous, let alone God's message, universal messages. From a universal message as far as the previous prophets are concerned, as far as their community is concerned, that is messages to their community, and it is a universal among this community. Now it is universal mankind-wide. But that cannot be that, or this speech cannot be understood in a way that I will argue whether Jesus spoke in the cradle or not. So what? That is why we shouldn't reduce the value of the Quran. It is literature, literal meaning. impossible. But to me, I'm very much convinced that it is impossible to read the Quran and make sense of it by following the literal meaning of the verses. We have to wake up and we have to be careful not to fall into, up, like to start, I think, no, nothing, something now, I'm sorry. Simple argument. Agabe say, adding to Muhammad, as it said, everything speak with the language of disposition. Adding to Muhammad. I see Muhammad side. I understood the previous speaker. So the Prophet Muhammad. So it is said everything speaks with the language of disposition. It's the way they are created, the way they exist as we see it. Whether they are created or not, the second stage of decision, human decision. So we have to be comfortable with the Quran. And definitely we should ask, especially you intelligent people here, not everybody can do that, but to a certain extent, you can ask this question, what does it mean for me? But if you have not studied really, then you may not have the answer. But at least we should know that there is a question here, needs to be answered, and I don't have the answer. That is why we have to be very thirsty for understanding the Quran, because we have many questions and we have no answer, just because we haven't studied. And the people usually concentrate on arguing this story side of the prophetic narrations in the Quran, stories in the Quran, and Jesus was in Egypt. Was it in this Egypt here, as we know in the modern age, or was it Ramses the second or Ramses the first, the Pharaoh? Come on, argue. For what? So we have to, when in some cases, especially, by the way, it is an information which is important information for those who study the Quran, try to understand. There are quite a lot of descriptions from the life of the Prophet Muhammad ﷺ. And there are quite a number of verses, I don't know, let me say, maybe a fifth of the word, the Quran, is related, a fifth, a sixth, somewhere around there. My guess, I didn't calculate it. It is just a guess. Are really related to the life of the Prophet Muhammad's time, the events there, the wars and the situation of the hypocrites. It's very frightening if you study the narrations about this, hypocrites and their attitude, their treatment of the Prophet and God's treatment of them. You will find a lot of pieces in my life. It shouldn't be disappointing. It shouldn't really make us fall into despair that I may be an hypocrite. But if we are not aware of the disease, we cannot look for the cure of it. We cannot look for a doctor to cure them, for a medicine to heal them. That is why the narrations about the hypocrites, a lot. I mean, no one wants to mention them, but it is really much more than what we think of it in the Quran mentioned. These are the practical examples lived by the people around the Prophet Muhammad and the people around him. And in order to understand these narrations, we should have an historical context, especially related to fiqh matters. We should have an historical context, textual context as well, but the historical context. Especially this is very important. But in order to get the meaning from it and relate it to my life, I have to isolate it from the historical context and locate it into the context of the purpose of the teachings of the Quran. Now, this transfer is needed. And unfortunately, most of the time, people cannot make this transfer. They stay there in historical context, or they try to dilute this, the method related to fiqh or juridical matters, dilute it and take it out of its historical context and try to play with it, saying that, wherever you find the disbelievers, kill them, or prophet, encourage them, urge them to kill the disbelievers out of context, and then blame the Quran. How barbarous it is. Understand, this is wrong. Both of them are wrong. Dilute it, take it out of the context completely, or imprison the meaning of the Quran within the context only, not seeing the really morality, teaching of belief in them and how they are related to my life. For example, reading the life and the treatment of the hypocrites of Medina, famous, of the prophet, and say that why, what heinous people they were. No, it is talking about you and me. No, take it and make it universal as well. So that we will understand. Ask the question, why does the Quran mention so much about the treatment of hypocrites? By the way, never specifying any person, but hypocrisy in general. How the Prophet was really struggling and also having a very hardship in his spread of the message to people because of the attitude of the hypocrites. And rather than leaving them in its historical context, we have to take and see the universal message in it. We have to do that. In order to understand the universal message in it, we have to keep asking the very simple question, why does God tell me this? For me now, what does it mean? Most of the time, I find hard to relate it to my life, but still I feel the need to investigate and learn it. Now, why? Because I have the question and there is no answer. It troubles me. It puts me in trouble and it makes me my life meaningless. Well, I have a problem and I have no answer to it. I am hungry and there is no food. So only the person who looks for can find it, but not necessarily that when you search for the truth, you will definitely find it. We have to know our limits, our limitations. It means not capacity-wise limitations, no, knowledge-wise limitations. How much time do we really spend to understand the Quran? To me, For me, it is a shame on me. I don't really take the Quran seriously as the pillar of my life. And so that I just say that I believe in the Quran, whatever he says. And I ask the scholars, whatever the scholars tell me to do, not to believe. List the belief system, belief system. List it. Give me the list. What? You have to believe in God. Yes, I do. Okay. You have to believe in hereafter. Why? How? I don't know. But yes, I do. Why not? Why should I deny it? Because Quran says so. You have to believe in the Prophet Muhammad. Oh, how do I know? Oh, no, don't ask. Oh, no, of course, the history says that the Quran was distributed or conveyed to us through a person who's called Muhammad. So I believe in it. Why do you believe in the Quran? It is our sacred book. I believe in it. This is not really belief for you and me, especially for me. No, I cannot accept it. Why? Because I have no reason. So while I am asking these simple questions, the fundamental questions, I have to become aware that these questions need to be answered. So anyways, now we understood this miraculous explanation of the first verse, how we should apply to our life and how we should apply to our understanding of how the creation is taking place and which kind of attitude I should have by using the criterion of Tawheed in the example of the story of Jesus in the Quran. We will refer to it like this as much as we can. We will pray to Allah to expand our knowledge and to give serenity, peace to our mind and heart, so that we will have a journey with Jesus, inshallah, in our life. Okay, I think the time is really up and even late. So I'm sorry, every day I go beyond the limit of my time. Any question, any comment, more concern, anything more? So I have, otherwise I just will end the class for today. Let me see. No. Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim. Subhanaka la ilma lana illa ma 'allamtana. إنك أنت العليم الحكيم وآخر دعواهم أن الحمد لله